Good morning. This is a new video in the series of newspaper terms simplified, and it covers the newspaper terms related to polity and governance. The topics covered in this video will be now moving to the first topic. First topic is information technology, procedure and safeguards for blocking of access of information by public, rules 2009. So firstly understand why it is in news. Recently, the Ministry of Information Technology has banned 59 Chinese apps. So, the procedure of the ban of apps or different online content is given in this rule along with the section 69A of the IT Act. So, in this article, we will focus on two things. First is the acts and rules through which the government can ban any online content, and secondly, the procedure of banning the content. From the polity and governance point of view, you should know the different rules and acts because it can directly be asked in the examination. So the rules for blocking website and apps are: first is section 69 of the IT Act. It provides the government the authority to block public access to any information online, whether of that of website or mobile app, if it is against the sovereignty, unity, friendly relation with foreign states, and public disorder. So you should know these four criteria because the criteria for which the government can ban the website content under section 69 of IT Act can be directly asked in the prelims examination. And the second act through which the government can ban the apps and websites are Information Technology Procedure and Safeguards for Blocking of Access of Information by Public, Rules 2009. This act provides the procedure through which the apps can be banned. So the procedure is as follows. Each ministry appoints a nodal officer which takes the complaint from the general public. So the general public can place the complaint to the nodal officer related to the online content, whether it is from the website or different apps. If the nodal officer found that the complaint is genuine and there is some violation of rules, then the nodal officer submit the complaint to the committee, and the committee consists of the Minister of Information Technology, Minister of Law and Order, and Home Minister, along with the head of CERT-In. CERT-In is a cyber security cell of India. And after that, the committee analyze the content, and if they feel that the content should be banned, then they pass an order. But however, the website and app can be banned only after the signature of the secretary to the IT department. So even though if the committee has found that there is violation and the secretary has not signed in it, then the app or website will not get banned. So the signing of the secretary to the IT department is must for the banning of the website and app. And after that, there are two methods. First is through the ordinary route and second is through the emergency route. ऑर्डनरी रूट में होता है कि अगर गवर्नमेंट ने एक बैन के लिए प्रोसीजर इनिशिएट करा है तो वो कंपनी या जिसकी ये वेबसाइट है या ऐप है उसके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव को एक मौका देगी अपनी सफाई देने के लिए, और फिर उसके बाद डिसीजन लिया जाएगा कि इसको बैन करना है या नहीं करना है. सो द कंपनी विल गेट द चांस फॉर रिप्रेजेंटेशन. लेकिन इमरजेंसी रूट में क्या होता है कि गवर्नमेंट पहले ऐप्स को या वेबसाइट को बैन कर देता है एंड आफ्टर बैनिंग विद इन 48 आवर्स वो रिप्रेजेंटेशन को एक नोटिस भेजेगा कि आप अपना सफाई दीजिए. सो इन द प्रेजेंट केस the banning of Chinese app was done through the emergency route. So the Information Technology Rules 2009 provide two procedures. One is known as the ordinary procedure and second is in the cases of emergency. So in this article, focus on the rules and acts through which the apps and websites can be banned, and focus on the procedure along with the member of the committee and the criteria for which the apps and website can be banned, because questions on these four areas can be asked directly in the prelims examination. We will provide a detailed video on the banning of Chinese apps and its implication later. The second topic is Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. We all know that due to coronavirus epidemic and increase in unemployment rate, food security has become a major issue. So to provide the food security to the people below poverty line, government has launched Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. It has been extended to November 2020 and it will cover more than 80 crore people. Under this, 5 kg free wheat rice per person per month will be provided along with 1 kg free whole chana to each family. And the below poverty line has been divided under two categories, Antyodaya Ann Yojana and Priority Households category. So priority households category includes those persons which fulfill the criteria placed by the particular state for calculation of BPL. And Antyodaya Ann Yojana covers those people who are poorest of the poor. So by this figure you will be able to understand the difference. Under Antyodaya Ann Yojana, 35 kg ration per household is provided per month. And for priority households, 5 kg ration per person per month is provided. With the launch of Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, along with this, 5 kg ration per person plus 1 kg pulses per household will be provided. This will be free of cost. This will be according to the NFSA Act. And please see the difference. 1 kg pulses will be provided per household, not per person. And 5 kg ration will be provided per person. So these are the two things which you have to differentiate, otherwise you will get confused in the examination. Similarly, in Antyodaya Ann Yojana, 35 kg ration per household is provided, and to priority households 5 kg ration per person is provided. So focus on this difference. Under NFSA Act, wheat is provided at rupees 2 per kg, rice is provided at rupees 3 per kg. And in few states it is provided free of cost. So the public distribution system will work as it is, and along with that Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana has been added to it so that the food security can be provided in this epidemic era. Now moving to the third topic, that is Manrega and why it is in news. Due to coronavirus epidemic, the unemployment rate has increased and people are migrating to villages, and there people are enrolling in Manrega, an act that provides right to work. So according to the latest report, at least 1.4 lakh poor rural households have already completed their quota of 100 days in first 3 months of the year. So they will not be eligible for the work for rest of the year. So this will create more unemployment, and another 7 lakh households have completed 80 days. So in coming 20 days they will also exhaust their working days. So the activists related to Manrega are demanding for rise in work days. So this article provides a basic introduction to the Manrega scheme, its achievement, and what are the issues that raised in the coronavirus epidemic time and what are the solutions for it. So firstly, moving to the introduction to Manrega. Manrega is the largest work guarantee program in the world that was enacted in 2005, and its primary objective is guaranteeing 100 days of wage employment per year to rural households. So under this, each person will be guaranteed 100 days of wage employment. Secondly, by the provision of employment, it will address the problem of chronic poverty. And third, it provides a procedure for decentralization because Panchayati Raj system has the power of deciding the planning and implementation of the work which will be done under Manrega. So these are the three main objectives of Manrega. Now moving to the achievements. It ensures livelihood to people as it provides employment. It provides participation of women, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, etc. So it provides inclusive growth. Third, the increasing of wage rate in rural areas strengthen the rural economy because the people have the money, so automatically the demand of the material will increase and there will be a balanced demand and supply. It also leads to sustainable development, and as Panchayati Raj system has the power of planning and implementation, so it strengthens the decentralized system. However, the issues faced during lockdown are, as I have earlier said, that thousands of people have migrated to villages and they are unemployed. So they are dependent on Manrega for wages. Secondly, they are facing long delays in payment of wages. And people are exhausting 100 days of work in the first 3 months of the year. So during the lockdown, these issues have been placed, and the experts and activists related to Manrega have placed some demands, or we can say that have recommended for the solutions. So the first is they have asked for increasing the work days from 100 to 200 days. Secondly, local decentralized planning exercises. That means the complete power should be shifted to Panchayati Raj system. And the third is under the Manrega scheme, due to drought or some natural disaster, the work days can be increased from 100 to 150 days. So the activists are asking to declare coronavirus as national disaster so that the work days can be increased from 100 to 150 days. So in this article, you have understood the issue going on due to coronavirus in the Manrega system. Now moving to the fourth topic, that is Essential Commodity Act 1955. As the name suggests, the Essential Commodity Act regulates the production, supply and distribution of commodities that are essential so that they can be provided to consumers at fair prices. So it includes the drugs, fertilizers, pulses and edible oils, petroleum and petroleum products. So the main purpose of this act is कि जितने भी एसेंशियल कमोडिटीज़ हैं वो पीपल को ईज़िली प्रोवाइड हो सके विदाउट होर्डिंग और बहुत ज़्यादा इंक्रीज्ड प्राइस में ना हो, ताकि हर कोई इस चीज़ को अफोर्ड कर सके. तो थ्रू एसेंशियल कमोडिटी एक्ट गवर्नमेंट उस प्राइस को रेगुलेट करती है सो दैट इट कैन बी अवेलेबल टू consumers at fair prices. The act provides that new commodities can be added by center at any time. So recently, government has added face masks and hand sanitizers and has been declared as essential commodities. क्योंकि कोरोना वायरस में the main thing is the usage of face masks and hand sanitizer. And we all know कि जैसे ही कोरोना वायरस एपिडेमिक धीरे धीरे बढ़ना शुरू हुआ था, the price of the mask and the hand sanitizer had shoot up. So government has placed that in Essential Commodity Act ताकि उसकी prices को regulate करा जा सके. So how it works? If the center finds that a certain commodity is in short supply and its price is rising, it can notify stock holding limits on it for a specified पीरियड. कोई भी कमोडिटी की प्राइस तभी इंक्रीज होती है जब देयर इज अ गैप इन डिमांड एंड सप्लाई. तो मास्क और हैंड सैनिटाइजर की डिमांड बढ़ रही थी लेकिन लोग उसको होर्ड कर रहे थे एंड ड्यू टू होर्डिंग सप्लाई जो है वो रिड्यूस होती चल जा रही थी, तो ऑब्वियसली द प्राइस विल इंक्रीज. सो गवर्नमेंट हैज़ नोटिफाइड द स्टॉक होल्डिंग लिमिट कि कोई भी पर्सन इतना ही मटेरियल अपने पास होल्ड कर सकता है, उससे ज़्यादा अगर करेगा देन इट विल lead to punishment. So the Essential Commodity Act cracks down on holders and black marketers for the commodities which have been declared essential. So in this you have to focus on two things. First is which commodities are present in the Essential Commodities Act and what is the role of center and state in rationalizing the supply of commodities. So now moving to the new topic, PM CARES Fund. In this article, we will discuss about PM CARES Fund and Prime Minister National Relief Fund. What are the similarities between the two and what are the differences? Due to coronavirus epidemic, government has created PM CARES Fund for the donations. But the controversy has erupted that even with the presence of Prime Minister National Relief Fund, what was the use of creation of PM CARES Fund? So in this article, we will focus on the similarities and differences to understand the formation of new fund. So firstly, moving to the PM CARES Fund. So the first thing is PM CARE Fund is a public charitable trust and the prime objective is to deal with emergency or distress situation like posed by COVID-19 pandemic. Now moving to the second point, Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman of the PM CARES Fund. And the Minister of Defense, Minister of Home Affairs, and Minister of Finance are ex officio trustees of the fund. So you should remember which of the ministries are ex officio trustee of the fund, because it can be directly asked in the examination. The third main thing is the fund is administered on an honorary basis by a joint secretary in the PMO. So for the release of the fund and the implementation of the fund, the power has been given to joint secretary in the PMO. Now moving to the Prime Minister National Relief Fund. Prime Minister National Relief Fund was established entirely with public contributions and does not get any budgetary support. So it is also for donations. The donations can be accepted from individuals, organizations, trusts, companies, and institutions. The donations done in this fund are exempt from income tax, and the purpose of this fund is it is utilized to provide the immediate relief to families which are killed in natural calamities or natural disasters. And secondly, it provides expenses for medical treatment and mainly to the acid attack victims. So now moving to the similarity. Both funds are accepted voluntary contributions by individuals and organizations, and they are not given any budgetary support. So this is common in both, as both are for donations. Both the funds are creation Prime Minister in his ex officio capacity and do not come under the purview of the government. So they are controlled, managed and governed by the Prime Minister, and it does not come under the purview of the government, and the government policies cannot be managed through this fund. Both funds are created for similar cause, that is provide relief to citizens, and it cannot be used for government projects. So the main thing is, if they are formed for the purpose of disaster management, so the fund will be used for that only. The most important 2 points are the funds are not obliged under RTI. इसलिए आप उसमें RTI डाल के कितना फंड यूज हुआ है या उसकी कोई भी इंफॉर्मेशन आप नहीं ले सकते. And the second thing is the funds are not subjected to auditing. So these are the two most important points which are common in both, and it can be asked in the examination. Now moving to the difference. Prime Minister National Relief Fund is purely on the discretion of PM. कि PM जैसा डायरेक्शन देगा उसके बेसिस पे ही ये फंड को यूज करा जाएगा. लेकिन PM केयर फंड में जैसा हमने ऊपर पढ़ा कि 3 मिनिस्ट्री को इसको एक्स ऑफिशियो ट्रस्टी बनाया गया है, तो इसलिए यहाँ पे ये बात हो रही है कि PM केयर फंड इज मोर डेमोक्रेटिक, क्योंकि यहाँ पे दूसरी मिनिस्ट्रीज के साथ भी डिस्कशन हो रहा है कि इस फंड को कैसे यूज करा. एंड द सेकेंड डिफरेंस इज बोथ फंड्स डू नॉट एक्सेप्ट कंट्रीब्यूशन फ्रॉम PSUs आउट ऑफ बजटरी एलोकेशन. कि कोई भी PSU अपने बजट से निकाल के इसमें फंड नहीं दे सकता है, लेकिन इसमें PM केयर्स फंड में एक क्लॉज ऐड करा गया है कि PSUs का जो CSR का फंड है दैट कैन बी कंट्रीब्यूटेड टू द PM केयर फंड. सो कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, दैट मीन्स कि अंडर द कंपनी एक्ट every organization has to contribute few percentage of its budget for the social development and mainly for the areas in which it is working. So this is known as corporate social responsibility. So the PSUs can contribute to PM Care Fund from this fund. So by this article, I hope you have been able to differentiate between the two funds, and this topic is very important and can be asked in prelims examination. Now moving to the next topic, that is NatGrid. The full form of NatGrid is National Intelligence Grid, and recently it has signed a memorandum of understanding with the National Crime Records Bureau to access the centralized online database on FIRs and stolen vehicles. NatGrid simple जो है ऐसा प्रोग्राम बनाया गया है जिसमें बिग डेटा एंड एनालिटिक्स को यूज़ करके जितना भी डेटा क्राइम रिकॉर्ड्स में है उन चीज़ को एनालाइज करने के लिए to help track suspected terrorists and prevent terrorist attacks. And it will access real-time information from data stored with agencies such as income tax, banks, insurance companies, Indian Railways, credit card transactions and more. सो नेटग्रिड का मीन्स ये हुआ कि एक ऐसा प्रोग्राम बनाया गया है गवर्नमेंट ने जो एक सेंट्रलाइज सिस्टम की तरह वर्क करेगा और वहाँ पे जितना भी पर्सन का डेटा रहता है either related to the crime record or related to the income tax, इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज में किस स्कीम में इन्वेस्टमेंट करा गया है या क्रेडिट कार्ड ट्रांजैक्शन किस तरह से हो रहे हैं, ये सारा डेटा जो है वो नेटग्रिड को अवेलेबल होगा. और अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस डेटा एंड बाय यूज ऑफ एनालिटिक्स, नेटग्रिड जो है वो ये एनालिसिस करेगा कि कौन सी एक्टिविटी जो है वो सस्पेक्टेड है और उसके बेसिस पे वो पहले से ही प्रिवेंशन स्टेप्स लेगा. एंड द most important and controversial thing is NetGrid is exempted from RTI. So the main issue with NetGrid is the privacy issue. क्योंकि आपका पूरा डेटा जो है वो गवर्नमेंट के पास जा रहा है, उसका किस तरह से यूटिलाइजेशन हो रहा है एंड हाउ दे आर इंक्रोचिंग ऑन द प्राइवेसी ऑफ ए पर्सन, ये चीज़ आप इस्टेब्लिश नहीं कर सकते. बट द बेनिफिट्स ऑफ NetGrid will be the police would have access to information of person at a click of button. This will be a centralized system. पहले क्या था कि अगर आपको किसी और की इंफॉर्मेशन चाहिए, दूसरे स्टेट के पुलिस डिपार्टमेंट को आप रेफर करेंगे, फिर वो आपको इंफॉर्मेशन देगा. सो ये पूरा एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव प्रोसीजर में बहुत ही लेंदी हो जाता था. अब आपका क्या है कि एक सेंट्रलाइज सिस्टम बनने से जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन है वो तुरंत का तुरंत पुलिस को मिल जाएगी. So it is mainly for improving the intelligence system. And the last topic is National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. This organization was in news because it has issued notice against Rajasthan government, जिसकी ये guideline थी कि under the Right to Education Act, economically weaker section के जो children हैं उनका एडमिशन नर्सरी में नहीं होगा, उनका एडमिशन क्लास 1 से होगा. इन दिस आर्टिकल वी विल डिस्कस अबाउट द नेशनल कमीशन फॉर प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ चाइल्ड राइट्स एंड इट्स फंक्शन. सो एज द नेम सजेस्ट, it is under the administrative control of Ministry of Women and Child Development, and it ensures that all laws, policies, programs and administrative mechanisms are in consonance with the child rights as enshrined in the Constitution of India and UN Convention. यहाँ पे जो इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है कि it defines child as a person from the age of 0 to 18 years. And the other important thing is it is a statutory body under the Commission for Protection of Child Rights 2005 Act. So you should know two things. It is a statutory body and second the definition of child which it has given. Now moving to the functions and powers. I am not discussing the functions and powers in detail as it can be studied from the PDF given in the description box. Hope you have understood all the topics discussed in this video and have found it useful for the prelims examination.
Thanks for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with your friends. For more guidance and strategy, you can visit our website www.ishelpdesk.in. Also, if you have any queries related to preparation, you can send us a mail at info@ishelpdesk.in. You can also send a WhatsApp message on 85860 Do let us know your feedback in the comment section below. Also, let us know if you are facing any challenges in your preparation and we will try to make a relevant video for resolving the same. Thank you.